So continuing with different scenarios to address automation, let's see how burp macros can help us with anti-cross-site request forgery tokens that are present inside of requests. So first, a quick review of anti-CSRF tokens or cross-site request forgery tokens. An application is going to mitigate the threat of cross-site request forgery, otherwise known as CSRF, by placing these anti-CSRF tokens in each request submitted by the user. Now, these tokens are designed to address replay attacks, and generally they are assigned on each previous response. In this particular situation, we can use burp to recursively look back at the previous response, grab that anti-CSRF token so that we can then submit the request. The reason why this is handy is because when you start working with intruder or scanner, particularly with intruder, when you want to actually have intruder just focus on payloads, you don't want to have to be messing around with making sure that anti-CSRF tokens are in the right place. So this really comes in handy for those types of situations. So let's go ahead and see this in action in this macro demo. We're going to look at how we can populate anti-CSRF tokens in our requests. Once again, I am going to use Matilde for this particular demo. In this demo, we're going to take a look at how we can build a macro that can handle anti-CSRF tokens for us in the application. So once again, we want to use the Matilde application. In order to get CSRF tokens that look similar to what we might find in the real world, let's go ahead and crank up the security level from 0 up to 5, and how you do that is just toggle security twice. So after clicking that twice, you should be up to security level 5. Now the particular exercise that we're going to do can be found under OWASP 2013, CSRF, add to your blog. Now make sure that you're logged in. What you're going to do is just add a blog here, add any kind of message. And if you scroll towards the bottom, what you'll notice is there's a posted token. So in order to post this message, you have to provide a valid token in your request. So the valid token that I presented in my request is what the server was expecting. So I received this message token as valid. Now I've had all of this traffic flowing through burp, so go on over to the proxy tab, HTTP history table, and take a look at that latest entry. So if you look at that entry, you'll see in the request that we have a CSRF token that is presented with our blog entry. So what I'd like for you to do is go ahead and send that to Repeater. And now what I would like for you to do is invalidate this token by injecting some random values inside of it. I'm just going to put some X's in the middle of it. And then I'm going to click Go. If we go to the Render tab, what you should observe now, if you go to the bottom, is we get a message that the token is now invalid. We're going to build a macro that will handle these anti-CSRF tokens in each of our requests for us. So we've created a scenario where our token is invalid. We're going to create our macro, and then we're going to come back to this scenario to see how the macro fixes it. So let's go ahead over to Project Options, Sessions, and create a new rule. So let's go ahead and add a new session handling rule. We're going to call this Tokenize Me. Under the rule action, let's just go ahead and run a macro. Now we're going to build our macro, click the Add button, and what we want to do is we want to grab both the GET request previous to our posting, and we want to grab the actual post. Now the reason why we're grabbing the get previously is because that previous response has the token for the request that has to go with this post. So if we were to look at it individually, take a look at the response here. You can do a search for CSRF token, and you can see that there's a value here. If you just sort of look at that value and memorize some of the letters, then when you go to the request of the post, you will see that that same value is located in the CSRF token value for that parameter. So let's go ahead and grab these two. Click OK. Now the next thing that we want to do after we name this, let's name this token grabber macro. Now the next thing we want to do is configure our items. So we don't really have anything to configure for the get, but take a look at the post. You want to make sure that this parameter CSRF token is deriving its value from the previous response. So it should say derived from prior response. These other values really don't matter. You can leave them there for now. Now we can test our macro to verify that it's working properly. It looks like we did indeed get a CSRF token. So if I take a look at this post and I look at the response, I go to the render tab. Once again, I do see that token is valid message. So this gives me confidence that my macro should be working properly. I'm going to go ahead and click OK out of the macro editor and click OK. Now let's talk about scope. We're only testing this in the repeater, so let's just leave repeater there. I have set as my scope this particular target application, and I did that in the target tab, so I'm going to select the second option for my URL scope. Click OK, and we have it enabled, so let's go ahead and test out our macro. Now before I click the Go button, I would like for you to go to the Extender tab, go to the BApp Store, and I would like for you to add in an extension called Logger++. So go ahead and install that. Go to the new Logger++ tab. Make sure you pull down this menu so that you can see the entries here. Go to the options. Make sure that instead of all tools, that just repeater is selected. Now let's go back to repeater and let's click the Go button. So this time we now have our token is valid, and if you go to the Logger tab and view the logs, you'll see that those two entries that we selected for our macro, they got replayed. So there's the get and there's the post. We can modify our macro so that the playing of the macro actually occurs after the fact, and we could easily do that. So let's go ahead and clear this log. Let's go back to our macro, and I'm actually going to remove the reference to the macro, and for my ad I'm going to say run a post request macro. I'm still going to use the same macro, so click OK. I'm going to use the same scope. Click OK. So now let me create the scenario of the invalid token, and I'm going to click the Go. Once again, I get a valid token, but now when I look at the logger, you can see that the post that was in the repeater tab gets executed first, followed by the two steps that were recorded in my macro. So hopefully this is getting you excited to learn the next type of macro, which will be how we can defeat CAPTCHA challenges.